You're now tuning in to Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts every Tuesday on Intention Radio. Tune in for enlightening interviews with featured guests who discuss their diverse paths to self-awareness and balance. Email your questions for Chessie and our guests every single week here on Get on the Grid. And here's your host, Chessie Roberts.
Welcome and happy Tuesday. It's great to be with you here again this week on the latest episode of Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts on Intention Radio. My guest tonight is Garnet Schulhauser, and he and I would like for you to take just a second and align with us in our energies of co-creation so that this show gives you the best information to your highest good and best outcome. So welcome, Garnet. It is wonderful to have you. We're going to talk about his book, Dancing on a Stamp. How in the world did you get this particular gift of this book? What did you do that walked you into this?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on your show, Chessie. Delighted to be here. So in answer to your question, I will sort of go back and explain to you sort of how the book arose. And it was back in 2007, so almost 6 years now. And I was a practicing lawyer in Calgary in Canada, and I was a partner in a very large law firm working in a high, office tower. And so one Monday afternoon in May, I decided to go for a stroll just to get some fresh air. So I took the elevator down and walked out into the street in front of our building, which was a pedestrian mall, was closed off to vehicles, but people would walk up and down there, shopping and going to restaurants and so on. So I started off my stroll, and I had strolled down the street many times before. Anyway, my head, I'm sure, was in the clouds, and I was strutting along in my navy pinstripe suit, looking every bit like a straight-laced stuffed shirt corporate lawyer. And after a couple blocks, all of a sudden I was stopped in my tracks. And what happened was this homeless man jumped out in front of me and stood right in front of me. Now, he looked like a typical homeless man, and I'd seen these people in the street many times before. I mean, he had long, stringy, greasy hair, scraggly beard. He had dirty clothes that looked like he'd been sleeping in them for weeks. And my usual practice when I ran into these people, where they ran into me, was to do a quick sidestep and go around, because quite often they were trying to get money. And in those days, I wasn't inclined to pay too much attention to homeless people. That has since changed, of course, as I finished my story. Anyway, so the reason I didn't, make a quick sidestep around this particular homeless man was because he had these amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes that just sort of were riveting. They sort of held me in place. And I just stood there, and I really couldn't move, and I suppose the better thing to say was I really didn't want to move, because those amazing blue eyes were sort of doing two things at the same time. The first was that his gaze was penetrating deep inside of me. Like I felt like he was looking right into the depths of my soul. And I felt that he knew everything about me, like everything I'd ever said or done in my life. He knew all my hopes and aspirations, all my fears and anxieties. And he even knew my deepest and darkest secrets. And I'm not sure how he knew this, because we'd never met before, but I just sensed that he knew all this. So I was standing there sort of feeling naked and exposed to some degree. And the reason I didn't feel violated and want to sort of turn tail and run was because at the same time, these amazing blue eyes were sending a gush of pure, unconditional love towards me. And it was just sort of entering my body and infusing my whole being with this wonderful feeling of peace and security. It was an amazing feeling, something I never had before. And so I stood there transfixed. I was like a deer caught in the headlights, and I just sort of soaked it up. I didn't want to go anywhere, and I could have stayed there forever because it was such a wonderful feeling. And then after, I don't know how long it was, he broke my reverie by saying, "Why are you here?" And then he quickly disappeared into a nearby store. Well, after a few seconds, when I finally collected my wits, I knew that I had to go and try to find this guy, find out who he was, why did he stop me, and where did he get those amazing eyes from. So I went into the store that he went into, and there was only one entrance and one exit, and I could clearly see throughout the store he wasn't there. I hadn't seen him come out. So I went back into the street, walked up and down the mall for a few more blocks, he was gone. Couldn't see him. So I made my way back to my office. My head was sort of all spinning.
I bet it was.
And it was like, what just happened? Was I dreaming? Was I hallucinating? Did this happen? Who is this guy? So I went back to the office, and that evening at home, these thoughts kept on roiling through my mind, and I knew I had to go back the next day to try to find this guy.
Well, let me ask you here, Garnet, was your walk that you took that day something unusual that you didn't ordinarily do? Was it a compulsion for you, or was it just an everyday thing?
Well, it wasn't every day, but sometimes, in the middle of the afternoon when the cobwebs were sort of gathering in my brain, we all have those moments in the middle of the afternoon. And so not every day, but, 2 or 3 times a week, I would just sort of duck out for 10 minutes and take a walk and gather some fresh air and then go back to my office. So it wasn't unusual for me to take a little stroll on the mall. Maybe something sort of compelled me unknowingly to do it that day. Don't know, but I had taken strolls in that mall before, but had never run into Albert before.
Ah. So
anyway, back to the story. The next day, I go back the very same time in the afternoon, and I walk up and down the very same mall, and I was probably walking for 15 or 20 minutes, couldn't find him anywhere, about to give up hope, when I suddenly spot him sitting on a bench by himself. So I walk over to him, and I said to him, who are you and why did you stop me? And he said, I'm a soul just like you, and I'm here to answer your questions and to help you on your journey.
Wow.
And so at that stage, my lawyer brain kicked in, and I was a little skeptical. It's hard to turn off your lawyer brain when you've been doing it for over 30 years. So I said to him, well, listen, you say you're here to help me, but it doesn't look like you could even help yourself, because you look like you've been, sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish.
Oh, dear.
So he just gave me the biggest smile, and he said, looks can be deceiving, because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. He said, you can turn around and go back to the office and see if you can find the answers you've been searching for on all those emails waiting for you on your computer, or you can sit down here and take a chance with me. What do you have to lose?
Wow, I bet that hit home, didn't it?
Well, it did. And then luckily my intuition kicked in, and I thought, yeah, what do I have to lose? This is a very unusual guy, and the worst that can happen is I waste a half an hour sitting down and talking to this guy. And so I did. I sat down, and our conversation began, and it went on off and on for the next several months, not sort of every day, but every now and then. And the procedure was that I would ask Albert sort of what I thought were profound questions about life and death and the afterlife and God and all those great things. And he was very good at answering them. And he actually told me, shortly into the conversation, that he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he told me that I was the only one who could actually see him in the flesh.
Oh, so that had to kind of creep you out a little bit.
Yeah, well, not only could I see him, but I actually touched him. Like I touched the shoder and shook his hand, and he felt solid just like anybody else.
And apparently he had an odor, huh?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he really went all out for the total effect,
Wow.
In any event, he said that if somebody had been walking by that bench that day when I first met him, it would have appeared to them that I was sitting there on the bench by myself, talking to myself, because nobody else could see him. So anyway, that was quite revealing. But the conversation was really quite amazing. He was really a very wise, compassionate spirit who actually had a great sense of humor, and he wasn't above taking shots at me every once in a while for some of my many human foibles.
I have found in my dealings with my spirit guides and all of that, they have to have a good sense of humor because they're dealing with humans.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like some days they must just watch our antics and just laugh out loud, because to them it must be very funny. But yeah, humor's alive and well in the spirit side, as you know. In spirit guides, you have to have a good dose of it, or otherwise you wouldn't be able to carry on with the job. But and our conversation was really like two friends chatting over a beer. I mean, he didn't lecture me, he didn't preach. He just, he answered my questions and had struggle at times trying to describe or answer my questions in a way that my limited human mind could grasp and understand, because some of the concepts that he was trying to get across to me, it's there's no words to sort of describe what he was trying to say, and he had a bit of a difficult time. So I often had to get him to give me simple analogies and things like that to allow me to comprehend what he was saying. But he was very patient, and he actually said that he and I had lived several previous lives on Earth, several previous incarnations together in different sort of roles. So we chatted about that a bit. He didn't go into great detail. He didn't. I had all kinds of questions for him about, well, how many lives have I had and what have I done and so on. And he, at that stage, he said, "This is not important for you to know now, and it'll just sidetrack you." Because what really floored me was, shortly into the conversation, he was telling me all these amazing things, and I said to him, "Albert, it would be just great if you could let everyone in the world know your answers, because it would provide a lot of comfort and inspiration to many people." And he says, "Oh, I will." He says, "Because you're going to write a book." And so that was the first I heard of it. And at first I resisted, because I never thought of writing a book. I was a practicing lawyer and I had other things to do. But he persisted, gently persisted. And after a while, I realized there's no point in fighting this. I can dig in my heels for a while longer, but it's not going to do me any good. So I just caved in.
No, it won't.
I've learned since then that you can't really argue with spirit, because eventually they're going to win.
Absolutely. When you say I'm not going to, or I'll never do that, that's the very thing you end up doing. I've discovered that the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. And now I've sort of learned that when Albert says, "I think you should do this or that," it's sort of like, okay, I don't even bother arguing, even if it doesn't seem to be the right path for me to take at the time.
This is not a suggestion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
so
wonderful.
Anyway, that was the genesis of the book. And part of the reason you might say, well, this occurred, my first meeting with him was in 2007. I retired from my law practice, like basically a year later. And I just found that after meeting Albert and having such a change in my life and learning all the things from him, it just seemed to me that practicing law was kind of irrelevant.
I hear you.
Wasn't there for me. So I retired, and then it took me a while to sort of really get my head around writing the book. I was still struggling with it, because the people who knew me in my pre-Albert meeting stage, I mean, I was a straight-laced lawyer.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about spirituality or religion or anything else. And I knew that there'd be so many people, my former partners and clients and friends and acquaintances, who would be just totally astounded if I wrote the book about my conversations with Albert, and they discovered that. I mean, so I knew that there was going to be some fallout. And it was really a struggle that my friend Sherry Cortland, who's an author herself, has aptly described. It was sort of my decision to come out of the spiritual closet. And that's what I had to do. So I had to struggle with that for a while. Then once I sort of said, well, okay, I'm going to do it. And because if I don't, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So I decided to write the book, and then I had to get busy writing it. And then finding a publisher and so on. So there was a bit of a process. The book wasn't published actually until October of 2012. But I've never turned back. I know some people have shunned me because of what's in my book. But I've had a lot of good comments from people that really surprised me, who said, "Good for you. You had the courage to go ahead and write this book." So anyway, I'm very happy I did it. And I'm happy to talk on radio shows about my book. And in fact, I've just finished my second book, which is More Adventures with Albert, which I finished in January, and I sent it to my publisher, and they're reviewing it right now. So hopefully they will see fit to publish that one as well.
Well, that's exciting. I love that you know Sherry. She's been a guest on my show too, and I like her books and her comments and her way of presenting this particular topic. I've discovered that a lot of times my guidance laugh at me for wanting clumsy human words to be able to relay what it is they're telling me. Just like you did, you were having to ask for explanations and stuff, and they just kind of laugh at me about that.
Yeah, because even though like Albert has had his own incarnations as a human, but of course, when you're back on the spirit side, you sort of forget that. And of course, you don't have those limitations on the spirit side. So then he's trying to tell me things, relate things, concepts to me that are very easily understood on the spirit side, but are more difficult for human minds to grab a hold of. And so and sometimes he would just sort of chuckle and wonder, like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you understand this? Well, he was very patient, though.
I keep reminding, and my guidance is very patient too, and I keep reminding them, look, guys, I can feel what you're telling me. I can see the pictures you're sending me, but to try to translate those feelings and pictures into, again, clumsy human words is not the most easy thing I have ever tried to do. And that's probably wrong. It should have been the most easiest. I don't know.
Our journeys on Earth, Chessie, weren't meant to be easy, as you know.
No, they weren't. We're going to have to take a really quick break here. Garnet, we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts here on Intention Radio.
Aloha. Thank you for joining us here at Intention Radio. David, your host again, just passing on my gratitude for you that are joining us and sharing your vibration with us. I quite often speak about vibration. A lot of our guests and our hosts do too. The heart is very powerful, and I do mean electronically. We are sending out vibrations with every breath we take, with every heartbeat we take. Thank you ever so much for sharing yours with ours. We do look forward to sharing ours with yours. That is what this community is about. And for those of you that are inquisitive about being a guest on Intention Radio or a host, please join us, because you will become part of the family, closer-knit part of that family. All of us are. Thank you for joining us at Intention Radio.
Join me, Soraya Dean, as we explore conversations at the Peace Table every Tuesday on intentionradio.com.
Imagine thousands of people from around the globe gathered together for 15 minutes to change the world. Well, it's happening. Every Saturday on the Attention Call, in your car, at work, walking, driving, or working out, you can join us. Visit www.intentioncall.com and download the free app to be part of this massive movement. Join the world's largest intention call at www.intentioncall.com. See you this Saturday.
Hi, this is Kimberly Sherry with Heal.
Hello, everyone. It's Tamara Gold with Empowered Living. You are listening to Intention Radio.
And you're listening to intentionradio.com.
Welcome back. You are on Intention Radio with Chessie Roberts here on Get on the Grid. And my guest tonight is Garnet Schulhauser. And we're talking about his book, Dancing on a Stamp, and how he was fortunate enough to meet one of his spirit guides, I'm going to say in the flesh, although he was the only one who could see him. And it resulted in this wonderful book. What all did you find out from, was his name Albert?
Albert, yes.
Yes. What all kind of things did you find out? You said you asked him a lot of different questions, and I'm sure our listeners can think of about 1,000 they'd like to ask.
Right. Well, the main points from Albert that I got from him to sort of answer my sort of big questions in life that I've been asking for a number of years, like, who am I? Well, he says, you and everyone else on your planet, you're all eternal souls. And this would be no surprise to you, Chessie. You were created by the source as beings of energy, and you sort of you spun out from the central sun like a spark of light, and you're created by the source. Some people call the source the creator or God or all that is. Doesn't matter what name you use. The source created you and everyone else and everything in the universe, and you all form part of the source, and you're all connected to each other. So that's who you are. You go on forever. You're just having a human journey on Earth in this incarnation, but it doesn't end when your human body dies. Your soul goes back to the spirit side where you came from.
And this is huge information right here, because once you can wrap your mind around that concept, you realize that all these things that you think are stopping you are just you allowing things to stop you, because you can do whatever you set your mind to once you realize what you truly are and why you're truly here. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, that is the big thing. I mean, if you understand where you came from, who you are, where you're going to go, and why you chose to have a journey on Earth, then it just changes your whole outlook. You realize that you create your own reality, and that you can, whatever it is that your situation you have, you can change it by changing your attitude and your outlook towards what is happening around you. And when you realize you're here to learn, then every experience you have, you know, good or bad, you realize it was there as a lesson, as a learning tool. And the key is to know what to take away from that, so that you end up with a positive attitude, and you'll have a happier life, enjoy your journey more. And it's also good knowledge to know that, you know, no matter what you do, like Albert said, you know, don't worry if you mess up, you know, on Earth. Don't worry if you take a wrong turn, if you make a mistake, because no matter what you do on Earth, it stays there. When your physical body dies, you go back to the spirit side, and you just have to sit back at that stage and look back in your life and try to figure out what you learned, what you could have done better, and use that as a sort of a learning tool for choosing your next incarnation. So it's not. Your life on Earth is not a matter of, pardon the pun, life and death. I mean, it's just a learning experience, and you, no matter what you do, you always go back to the spirit side. So that certainly helps me in terms of knowing that, God, if you have a bad day, and you messed up somewhere, well, don't worry about it. Learn from your mistake and try to do better and move on. But ultimately, you're going back to this wonderful place when you die, and you should treat your life on Earth here as a true learning experience.
I hear you. That made me think of the fact that we're people dolls. You wind us up and we make mistakes, and that's how we learn. I want to ask a question about the lessons and guilt. I made a comment on one of my social medias the other day about you meet people and they're either a lesson or an opportunity or both. And somebody says, no, lessons are only from guilt. And I don't think I agree with that. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that at all. In fact, one of the challenges that we have is to try to get rid of our negative emotions like guilt and fear and anger and hate. So you can learn lessons from everything around you, from other people, from, you know, random event or seemingly random events that happen in your life, you know, things that Mother Nature may foist on you, like earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes. You can learn from your pets, your animals. You can learn from the plants in your garden. I mean,
that was kind of my point in posting what I did, but I just kind of wanted a different take on it. But I understand what you're saying. That's very cool.
And the lessons that you try to learn are the ones that you had planned, that we all had planned before we were born, because we all do a life plan. And the life plan sets out, you know, some of the major things in your life, like, you know, what your name is, who your parents are, your siblings, your spouse, your friends and other relatives, you know. So you set all that out with the intent at that stage of saying, these are the things I want to learn, I want to experience in this life. And so you try to set your roadmap so that you can go down the path that will get you those experiences. But when you're on Earth, you're not allowed to remember what's in your life plan, or that even if you have one. And then you're also saddled, I guess, if that's the right word, with the fact that you have free will. So you don't remember what you're supposed to do, and you have free will to take actions. And so that means that invariably we're all going to stray off our intended course many times during our life.
Well, isn't that kind of how we learn where it is we're trying to go?
Exactly.
If we're paying attention.
Yeah. Well, we learn from our mistakes and our missteps, but we also get some guidance. And this goes back to Albert and the guides, is because every one of us has, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 guides through our lives, and sometimes they change. But our guides are always there, sort of coaching us, trying to coach us down to you come to a fork in the road, should I go left, should I go right? And they're trying to coach you to take the fork, the road that will get you closest to where you had intended in your life plan. Except that, unlike how Albert has been talking to me, these messages are very subtle. So it's like a whisper in your mind, an intuitive flash, a gut feeling. And the challenge that we have is to try to, listen for these messages and understand what they're trying to tell us. And all too often, and I'm guilty as much as anyone, my mind is cluttered with things, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing tomorrow? And it's hard for their messages to get through, but that's what we really have to do so that if we can become better at listening to these messages, we'll have a better chance of getting closer to the path that we had intended, before we're born. But as I said, at the end of the day, if we've strayed way off our course, and we die before we ever get back on, no big deal. We can come back as many times as we like.
Well, let me jump in here. You said you met Albert spontaneously. It was just you're walking down the road and mall there, and there he was. How does that translate to asking for help? I've been told that your guardians are always there and your guidance is always there, but they don't jump in until you ask for their assistance because of this free will that you just mentioned. How is it, do you think, that you were able to meet your guide out of the clear blue like that? Or do you think maybe you had asked for help and didn't realize it?
Oh, no, I quite clearly had been asking, not necessarily asking my guides because I wasn't really sure if I had guides or who they were, but I had been constantly asking questions over the last 10 or 15 years. Typically, it would be like a Monday morning and I'd be staring at my mug in the mirror while I was shaving. and I'd sit there and stare at myself and say, okay, who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to accomplish? Somebody please tell me. If I'm supposed to be doing something, and I'm not doing it, please tell me what I should be doing, excuse me, it was very frustrating. So I had been asking the questions, not necessarily asking my guides to come and help me, but I was asking somebody to answer my questions. And that's how Albert showed up. And so he had decided that, it's time to give this man his answers and, let him spread my answers to everyone else. 'Cause there's probably a lot of other people asking the very same question. So.
Oh, absolutely. I know everybody's asking some of these questions, and the more awake we become, the more of these questions we're asking. So I think it's very fortuitous that you have managed to pull all of this together. This leads me to another question. You were talking about not taking our mistakes with us. And how does that play into the karma thing?
You mean in terms of not taking our mistakes on Earth with us?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see, karma is sort of according to Albert, it's not a universal law that sort of affects everyone without any exceptions, like the law of gravity. He says karma is more like a system of measuring what you do in your incarnations in terms of the good and the bad things. And so he said, if you die and you've accumulated more negative karma, and you've made more mistakes than the good things you've done, he says that's a factor when you're doing your life review after your incarnation. You look at all that and you look at sort of your karma score, and that's and that motivates you as a soul to say, okay, I don't have to come back and clear off my karma. It's my choice, but because I'm a good spirit and I want to leave a positive effect on this planet, I'm going to plan my next life so I can go back and try to rebalance my karma. And sometimes that may take a few hundred lives, but it's something that you want to do so that you can advance as a soul and basically graduate from the earth plane and move on somewhere else. Now, you don't have to keep on. This is an interesting part of it. You're not, as some people say, that you're stuck in the wheel of karma and you have to keep on going with no choice until you clear off your karma. He says that's not true. He says you come back to clear off your karma because you choose to do so. Oh. But if you just said, to heck with it, I'm going to just, I don't want to go back to earth anymore. I can't take it. I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to stay in the spirit side. Then you can do that. But in point of fact, he said that most of us will keep coming back to earth to rebalance our karma, to clear off the negative karma.
Now, let me tell you why I asked you that question.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I said, let me tell you why I asked you that question. not only because of the things you were saying that Albert had told you, but as I was doing some spiritual work with my guidance, one day they showed up in my living room, not like Albert did, but in energetic form. And they dumped this big pile of stuff in the middle of my living room. And they told me that this was some of my past karma that I needed to deal with. And it was a rather large mountain. And I told them, I said, well, I thought we'd already worked through that. And they said, well, what you need to do is to forgive yourself. And I thought, wow, I've got to go through all of this again and forgive myself. And when I did, things started moving and going well, but it kind of took me a while, I guess about 2 or 3 months to do it all. And that's why I was asking.
Yeah. And when they were saying to you, you need to do this, it was sort of like, we strongly suggest you do this.
Yeah.
But if you had refused to, I mean, you could just ignore it. But as a good soul who's trying to evolve, of course, you're going to take the advice of the spirits, and I'm sure you realized at that time that they were dead right. That
Oh,
you
yeah.
really to advance your evolution, you really did.
It never
need to
occurred to me to
yourself.
tell them no. I didn't take it as a suggestion. I took it as this is your next step. But I guess that might be where I am right now.
Yes, yeah, and so I don't think we're talking too much differently. I just think that Albert just said that karma, everyone should and wants to work off their negative karma, but it's not an absolute rule of the universe. And if you've had 100 lives on Earth and you still got some negative karma, and you're just absolutely tired of incarnating on Earth, he said you can just say, no, I'm not going back there. I'm going to some other place to incarnate, or I'm going to, you can actually work off some of your earthly negative karma on the spirit side by helping people who are on Earth. So there's a number of ways to sort of rebalance your karma. But if you absolutely dig in your heels and say, no, I'm not going to, then you don't have to. But you get a lot of peer pressure too, because you travel in a soul group, and like the people in your family, like your friends that are around you, chances are they're probably in your soul group, and groups of souls sort of travel through the earth plane together in various different lives and situations. And one time your husband was in one life when it might have been your son or your father or your grandfather. You keep on changing roles, and so there's a bit of peer pressure if you've accumulated some negative karma. You want to stay with the people in your group. If they're evolving by getting rid of their karma, you want to stay with them. You don't have to, but you clearly want to. So right. It's like a moral imperative.
I just wanted to feel clean again, is why I went ahead and did it. That was my first impetus anyway.
Yeah, and that's exactly how most souls view things, is that I don't want to sort of leave behind dirty laundry, so to speak, or negative karma. And so I'm going to do my best to go back and try to clean it up. And that's usually what happens, but it's not an absolute law of the universe. God doesn't say, Chessie, you have to keep on coming back until you get rid of all your negative karma. It's really your choice.
Well, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. You're tuned in to Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts here on Intention Radio.
Imagine hundreds and even thousands of people from around the globe gathered together for 15 minutes once a week with a purpose to focus their attention on one intention of love or abundance or health or world peace. Can you feel the power of this gathering? If so, join your brothers and sisters every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 10 p.m. London Time for 15 minutes that will change your life and the world around you at www.intentioncall.com.
Welcome back. You are still tuned in to Intention Radio, and you're with Chessie Roberts and Garnet Schulhauser on Get on the Grid with Chessie, and we're talking about free will and karma and all those wonderful things and the questions that we have for our lovely guides. You were saying that you had spoken with him about many other things. Can you give us maybe a clue about what some of those might have been?
Yeah, well, one of the basic questions I had right up at the beginning was that he said that where I came from was the spirit side, which is a wonderful place with no negative emotions and just full of peace and love. So I said to him, well, if it's such a wonderful place, why on earth would I choose to incarnate on Earth? Pardon the pun. And he said, well, it's because when you're on the spirit side, you can acquire knowledge about things, about other places in the universe, about the planet Earth, but it's sort of like book learning. And he said you don't really complete your knowledge or enhance your knowledge until you've actually incarnated on Earth in a physical body, on the Earth plane, which is one of the physical planes, and actually experience things that you just can't experience on the spirit side because it doesn't exist. So, for example, you can sort of acquire knowledge about some of the negative human emotions that exist on Earth, like anger and hate and guilt and fear. But you don't really know what those are like until you are actually living in a human body and you experience them firsthand. And so incarnating on Earth is a learning tool, something to experience, and it's just part of our soul's evolution. So that's why we choose to come here.
That makes.
And it may seem funny for you and I living on Earth to say, what was I thinking when I decided to come here? But we had very good reasons back then, and we just don't remember them. But anyway, so that's why we're here.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me, because I've always said that knowledge is what we know or what we think we know. We can read all the books in the world, but until you experience it, until you internalize it and use it, it doesn't transmute to wisdom. So what you just said makes all the sense in the world to me as to why we'd come down here or incarnate, as you said, on this plane to find these things out.
Yeah, like exactly right. The other thing that sort of surprised me a bit, and I was quite happy when he told me this, was just to back up a step. I was raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family, and of course in that background, the story is that God is the supreme being. God sends us here for reasons that He has to do something that only He knows the end result, or the result He wants to have happen, and that He makes rules for us to follow. We have to worship God. And at the end of the day, after we die, if we have to go in front of Him for judgment, and if we've misbehaved, we'll be punished. That was the thing I was raised with.
I think that's true for most of us.
Yeah, and as I got into my 30s, I sort of decided that this didn't seem to ride right with me, and I sort of rejected most of that, and I was looking around for a new paradigm to latch onto. And so some years later, Albert came, but what he said was, look, that's just wrong. He said the source, God, didn't send us here. We sent ourselves. We freely chose to come here. Nobody made us come here. So God doesn't have any particular path for us. It's sort of like, here it is. I created you. Now go out and explore the universe and acquire knowledge and wisdom, and whatever you do is fine with me, kind of thing. So God doesn't make rules for us to follow, contrary to what most organized religions say. Doesn't make rules for us to follow. Doesn't need or want to be worshipped. That's just not something that God requires us to do. And at the end of the day, when we die, God doesn't judge us. And it certainly doesn't punish us if we've done something wrong. I mean, God fully expects us to stray off course when we're on our human journeys, and there's no punishment, no judgment for what we did. The only people who judge us after we die is in fact ourselves, but judge in a very positive way. We look back on our lives after we finished our incarnations, and we sort of go back over every little aspect of our lives in a life review, and the reason for that is to try to learn from our life, our past life, and to try to understand where we went off track and what we could do better so that we can better plan our next incarnation. So that's all very contrary to what I was raised with, and I'm sure a lot of other people. So that was surprising to some degree, but very comforting to me.
So there is no hell to speak of. We create
there is
that
no
here.
hell.
I've always said we create that here on Earth. That's what we're living in before we wake up and before we realize what's really going on, because of all the drama and the stuff that we put ourselves through, thinking we know what we're doing.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, hell is just a creation, an invention of religious holy men. It's just something to put some fear into us. Their whole intention is to try to control the masses with guilt and fear. Guilt because you've broken some of God's rules and you've offended God, and then fear because if you don't make amends before you die, you're going to hell. It was just a great way to control people. And Albert says, no, it's just totally wrong. There is no hell. Everyone, even a murderer, goes back to the spirit side, back to heaven after they die, which is quite astounding for some people to accept. But but I understand it and I accept it.
Well, now let me get semantical, if that's even a word here, for just a minute. Heaven isn't a place like pearly gates and roller skating and all that sort of thing, right? It's that's right. It's just the spirit realm.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The spirit side, heaven, is just it's a spirit realm. Its vibration level was way, way, way higher than ours down here. The earth plane is sort of at a very low vibration level. Mm-hmm. So the spirit world is all around us. It's where it's our natural home. It's where we came from, where we go back to after every incarnation. And on the spirit side, we're like beings of energy. And so we don't have to eat or drink or shelter our bodies or do any of that sort of stuff. And we can basically have whatever we want through thought creation. So on the spirit side, our thoughts are very powerful and very instantaneous, which is quite different here on Earth, of course, as you know. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a great place, but it's not like sort of St. Peter standing at the pearly gates and letting you in.
Got the big book in his hand saying, no, you go down.
Not you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is comforting. And one of the things that I really like about it is that manifestation doesn't occur immediately. And like the Law of Attraction movie says, we'd have an elephant in the room just because we thought about it. But as we learn and we grow and we wake up, do we not raise our physical vibrations, or are they just our mental and spiritual vibrations?
Oh, no. I mean, part of our whole process here is to try to, in fact, expand our consciousness and raise our vibrations, and we can actually raise our physical vibrations as well. And that's part of what people on Earth are struggling with right now. We're trying to all increase our vibrations and move up the vibrational ladder, as it were. I mean, some people talk about moving from the third to the fifth dimension, old Earth to new Earth. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but by casting aside our negative emotions and embracing love and forgiveness and compassion, we are in fact doing that. And so, and in fact, as somebody said, humans have already raised their physical vibrations a lot in the last few centuries. And so I read, I can't remember who it was who said it, that if we were able to appear to the people, say 400 years ago, they would see us as sort of a not entirely solid. We'd be sort of shimmering a bit because we have, in fact, already raised our physical vibrations quite a bit. It's just very slow and you don't notice it. That's all. But yeah, that is the goal.
I have noticed that since I have started consciously and awarely working towards this vibrational rise, this uplifting, this waking up, whatever you want to call it, I've noticed that a lot of people, like you said, some of your friends are looking at you funny. I've lost a lot of friends because they aren't quite ready to go that route. And I understand that is natural and it happens to everybody. Is that what you think happened to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's just the people I lost were the people who just weren't there yet, weren't thinking along the lines I was, and weren't ready to accept many of the things I said in my book, and they just they felt that the best way was just rejection. Like I reject this guy's ideas, what he says, and I guess I should just reject him too, because I just don't believe it. But eventually they will come around.
I was going to say that's okay, because these people are where they are in their evolution, and just because they don't vibrate with you and where you are in your evolution doesn't make them right or wrong. It's just the way it is, right?
Exactly. Everyone's at a slightly different stage, and it's not like that the people who appreciate what the spirituality aspect of life. It's not that we're better than anyone else. It's just that we've progress further down that path. That's all. And It's not right or wrong what they think or what I think. Eventually the people who deny what Albert has said, when they cross over, they'll find out that he was right, and they can either find out here on Earth, or they can find out after they die, or they can find out in their next incarnation. It's really up to them.
Right. Well, I had, and my longtime listeners know this story too. I had an experience where I was taken into I'm going to call it the upper realm by my spirit guide. And while I was there, I was trying to take it all in, and over in the far corner of the area where we were was this big, huge silver tornadic energy moving. It was enormous and it was beautiful and it felt really good. And I asked my spirit guide, I said, what is that? And he told me that that was the energy of God. And I said, oh, well, what is it doing? Because it looked like it was going up to a height and then raining down all in this big circle. And he says, it's raining down to touch those who are ready to accept it. And I thought, well, that explains a lot about these different levels, because some people are ready, some people aren't. Some people are embracing and seeking and asking and kind of filling up their well with it, and other people are kind of running in the opposite direction. And that's all okay.
It is all okay, and it's all something that the source, the creator, knew would happen, and it doesn't disturb God at all. I mean, that's just part of, we're all at different levels. He created, we're not all identical physically. We're not identical in terms of being beings of energy. We all have our own energy signature, our own personalities, and that's all fine with God. I mean, there's no timetable. There's no deadline to evolve. You can take as long as you want to evolve.
Right.
And some people just evolve a little faster than others.
And there's no judgment. And
Nope.
I really like that. Once you realize that you don't have to judge every jot and tittle that comes through, you don't have to judge every breath you take, you don't have to judge anything at all ever. That is so freeing.
Yeah, it is indeed. And that's all tied into what you were saying before about the forgiveness, is that when you stop judging yourself, which you've done in the past, then you can forgive yourself. And put it past you and carry on with the rest of your life, because guilt and remorse are very, very negative energies and emotions, and they don't do any good for you, and they actually hold you back. So getting rid of the judgment and the guilt and forgiving yourself is very important.
It occurred to me the other day, I've been watching several different history type programs lately, and it occurred to me that without judgment and guilt, revenge, and sex, we wouldn't have anything to fight about. And we could use all that energy for something good and uplifting, like, growing crops or healing the earth, or something that's worth the energy expended.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the negative emotions just are a tremendous drain on our energy, and they're a real detraction from where we should be going. And so the extent that we can get rid of those, no, that's not, it's easier said than done, but we have to strive to try to get rid of them, both individually and then encourage others in our society to do so. But it has happened, and there has, in my new book that hopefully will be published sometime this year, Albert actually takes me to see up to a higher dimension where there is a new earth, and where some of the people who were previously on our plane have actually made the shift up to the new earth. And it's just a wonderful place. Like, there's no fighting or jealousy or hate or revenge. It's all a very wonderful place. So it can happen. Some people have already made the shift, and the rest of us can. We just have to work at it. Actually,
I was gifted by my guidance. They took me up so that I could see the planet and the energy around the planet and all of that. And I watched a lot of those people transition from this realm to another one. I didn't see where they went, but I saw their energetic forms leaving this planet. And it was one of the most breathtaking and amazing things I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't, Albert didn't actually show me the people making the transition. He actually showed me a civilization that had already done so a while back, and they'd been living there for a while. And it was just wonderful to see. But it was very encouraging because I knew then that clearly there's a path for all humans to take. And if we just work at it, we can all get there and just get rid of all the negatives in our life.
That's wonderful. I'm going to have to take our last break now, and stay with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes. You're tuned in to Intention Radio.
Aloha, and thank you ever so much for tuning in to Intention Radio. David Nettinger, one of your hosts that we have here at Intention Radio, and part of the family. And what we mean by family, all of you are that are listening. We are all connected. And what I mean by that, scientific studies show what spirituality already has known. Our hearts put out a vibration, if I can get right to the point. It's an electrical shock, so to speak. It reaches everywhere on the universe. And I know this isn't an open statement, but it does. Science has shown this. Thank you ever so much for sharing your vibration with us today on our show on Intention Radio.
Join me, Carly Alyssa Thorne, every Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Conscious Co-Creations here at IntentionRadio.com.
IntentionRadio.com.
Every Saturday, the world comes together to connect like never before. Thousands of powerful meditations reunite with a focused intention to create a shared experience that will impact the world around you. It's 15 minutes, and you can join no matter where you are. Visit www.intentioncall.com. That's www.intentioncall.com.
Join me, Soraya Dean, as we explore conversations at the Peace Table every Tuesday on IntentionRadio.com.
Welcome back. You are tuned into Intention Radio, and this is Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts, and my guest tonight is Garnet Schulhauser, and we're talking about his book, Dancing on a Stamp, and we have about 5 minutes before I have to tell him goodbye. So, Garnet, why did you name your book Dancing on a Stamp?
Well, it's an interesting story. It arose, the phrase actually came from Albert, but not initially in the sense of this should be your book title. During the course of our conversations, one day I had been sort of complaining and whining to him about something that hadn't gone right in my life. And Albert said to me, he said, you know, one of the problems you've had during your life is that you spent too much time dancing on a stamp. And I said, well, what do you mean dancing on a stamp? And he said, well, imagine that the world is like a big, huge, beautiful ballroom, and everyone around you is up and swirling around to the dance music and enjoying life and exploring everything around them. And you spent too much time standing on one spot like you're dancing on a stamp. And he said, you need to break out and you need to spread your wings and move around and explore your environment. So I thought that was an interesting phrase. And so several months later, when I had finished my manuscript and I was trying to find a title, that phrase kept on popping up in my mind, dancing on a stamp. So I asked Albert one day, I said, I'm thinking of using that as my book title. What do you think? And he said, great, good idea. So that's where it came from. I love the
analogy. It's wonderful. I can see that.
Yeah, and so I've had a lot of compliments on the title. It's kind of an unusual phrase, and I thought it was wonderful, but it actually did come from Albert.
It really got my attention when you sent it to me. I thought, oh my gosh, I have to know what this is about.
The explanation I just gave you is in the last chapter of the book, if you get around to reading it.
I'm going to have to go and get the book, and I encourage everybody else to as well. This is a wonderful opportunity to have complete one-on-one FaceTime with a spirit guide. That's just wonderful. I've never looked mine in the face. They have come to me on occasion in dreams and things like that, but I don't hold on to the image. It kind of fades away. The lesson sticks, but the face doesn't,
Well, I'll never forget Albert's face and his physical appearance, even though, now when we talk, it's not in the same way, but I'll never forget that. It was very, very real experience for me. In fact, more real than anything else that's happened in my life.
I'm sure. Well, it's kind of like I can't talk, vision quests that I have been on. And guidance has taken me in several different places. And those experiences are just as real to me, and they are just as fresh in my mind and in my heart as they were when they happened. So I can understand what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. It's something that has never faded from my memory, and you've had the similar experience. And I think it was very deliberate that those things are still very fresh in our minds, so we don't forget them.
Absolutely. I refer back to mine all the time, not only here on the radio show, but in lectures that I give, and sometimes my writing it'll come through. So I think they're. I wanted to say lessons, but I don't think that's quite the right word. It was deeper than a lesson. It was I guess, a transmutation of knowledge into wisdom.
That's actually a very good description.
Good, then I'll hang on to it.
Yeah.
Well, Albert, where did that come from? Oh my gosh. I'll have to explore that later. Garnet, before I let you go, could you give us your contact information and where to find your book and all that kind of thing, and anything else you want to tell us? We've got a few minutes left here.
Sure.
Well, I want to get everything out of you I can.
Yeah, great. Thank you. There are a number of online buy links on my website, which is dancingonastamp.com. And there's all the usual ones, Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so on. And you can buy them directly from my publisher. There's some bricks and mortar stores that carry my book. It's a bit hit and miss. But if your favorite store does not have my book, they can certainly order it for you. In terms of contacting me, I'd love to hear from anyone who has a question or a comment. And the email is contact@dancingonastamp.com. I also invite you to look at my YouTube page and my Facebook page. Those are all listed on my website. On my YouTube page, I have all the recordings from all my previous radio shows, and on my Facebook page, I make regular postings. So I welcome all listeners to dial in and get some information about myself and Albert. And you can download the first chapter of Dancing on a Stamp for free on my website. It's right on the homepage. You just have to click that and put in your email address, and away you go. So I hope everyone, takes part in what's in my website and gets whatever information that they need, and hopefully they will decide to buy my book and enjoy it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing this information with us. It was lovely having you here on the show tonight. I want to thank all of you for joining me on tonight's show here on Intention Radio. If you'd like to send a question, a topic you would like covered in this year's Guided Meditations with Victoria Chessie, or to take advantage of the free rune reading that I'm offering, send your question, suggestion, or request to me at chessieroberts.com. This is a one rune draw to answer a yes or no question that you, my listeners, email to me. Now, you'll receive your answer plus an explanation of the rune that was used to get it, and I'll send this to you via email. The explanation of the chosen rune may assist you in your understanding of your question, or maybe give you some insight in how you want to handle your issue. Please be patient. These will be answered in the order in which I receive them, and like I said, they'll come to you via email. Please use GOTG for Get on the Grid in your subject line as your promo code so that I don't send you an invoice. Be sure to be with me next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and 2 p.m. Hawaii for Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts. I want all of you to have a great week until I see you again, and I want to give special thanks this week to some lovely people who have helped me and supported me. Joyce and Barbara and Victoria, and I want to send a special thank you to Willis Odio, and I hope I said your name right, Willis, who has been jumping on my program for planting trees in his native homeland, and he is creating a forest to help the trees, help us breathe. So thank you all. Bright blessings. Good night. And I'll see you next Tuesday here on Intention Radio with Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts.
And this was another episode of Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts, happening here on Intention Radio every Tuesday. Stay tuned for more.